Hello and welcome. I'm June Bianchi. I'm an artist and art educational lecturer at Buzzbar University, and I'm going to share with you today a range of policies, readings, literature, case studies and practice on the theme of culture, inclusion and empowerment. While you're working through the video, which will last just over half an hour, you need to have open alongside the link document, the Word document, which will give you all of the links for the various videos that I recommend you to watch throughout this presentation. So while I've been talking, I imagine you're looking at the word cloud and noting a number of words that are related to the theme culture, inclusion and empowerment. In fact, I put in the word inclusion into the word cloud and these words appeared. I'd like you just to think about which ones you think are the most significant, any that you feel you've had direct experience of, and are there any words that you think are important that aren't actually there? We won't be covering all of these areas in detail, but we will be flagging up a snapshot of a range of different issues. These are very worthwhile and interesting issues for you to follow up later in your own time, and much material is available to you, which I will recommend, and also you can do further research yourself. So the aims of the session, first off, to identify key issues and debates on diversity, equity and inclusion within art education, to extend your understanding of current policy, practice and provision around the issues, and to explore the role of culture, creativity and the arts in supporting equity and empowerment. So what's the legal position? Where does policy lie currently? And what are the requirements for teachers? Well, there are the protected characteristics and they underpin legal requirements in terms of equity. And if you want to look down that list, you can identify which ones apply specifically to educational provision. And are there others that may not directly apply, but will actually have an impact on the children and young people that you are working with? In fact, all of them may well have some impact. So when we think of policy, it emerges from the basis of the requirement by law that people cannot be discriminated against because of any of these protected characteristics. Code of Practice for Special Educational Needs and Disability was written in 2014, updated 2020, and it deals with a range of equities and diversities within education. It promotes cultures, policy and practice to include all learners, advises on removing barriers to learning, supports aspiration and participation, and advocates incorporating parents' and learners' views, and also provides information on training and strategies of support. The aim, of course, is to enable all children with diverse needs to be successfully included. What can prevent this successful inclusion? Well, we all have bias and much of it is unconscious. We may well gravitate to favouring people who look like ourselves, share our background, our values, our ethnicity, culture or gender. We will be doing this. If we are, it's unconscious, most likely. So how do we actually raise our own awareness and create more equality, more respect for diversity, more capability for providing for diversity within our own practice? There's a short video here, available link in the link document, and it's got some interesting points about unconscious bias. I ask you to watch it and consider whether you've ever experienced or observed unconscious bias in any aspect of your life. So how can schools remove these barriers? Well, initially, the most basic removal is to prevent students from being barred physically or visually to access education. There needs to be provision for diverse learning needs, and that needs to be at every level of the school, both in the curriculum and outside of the curriculum, within the whole school ethos. And the school needs to have a welcoming attitude to all students and families, inclusive of their abilities, their needs, their culture, socioeconomic background, gender and sexual diversity and orientation. And that is a requirement by law. We could argue that the art department can promote a very positive practice in this area and support very much the success criteria, which Dr. Matthew Schulke advocates is inclusive practice will be successful for all children with many different attributes, such as ethnicity, language, gender, and socioeconomic status. So in order to evaluate whether a school is meeting the success criteria, we need to be looking at how successful are children and students across this whole spread of needs and abilities. And as I said, the art department would in many cases see itself as representing a real positive push for inclusion, for enablement, for empowerment. And what I'm going to do now in this next part of the presentation is provide a range of examples of artists and also some literature that you can dip into, some videos you can dip into, who are supporting these key ideas, these key concepts, and these key areas of practice within art education. Bob and Roberta Smith, who I'm sure you'll know is one person, not two, is an artist and art educational activist who has worked very closely with special interest group National Society for Education and Art and Design for many years, promoting the idea that art is beneficial across all areas of life and that schools should have art and the arts at the centre of their curriculum. And you can see he works a lot with these statement banners: art makes people powerful, art makes children powerful. You can read a bit more about Bob and Roberta Smith and other areas of power through the arts within this reading, which you'll find within the link document. So bias we've mentioned already, and bias is something that needs to be addressed and needs to be actively addressed. And one way of doing this, one area of educational practice, which is becoming to the forefront and has done for the last few years, is the idea of decolonizing the curriculum. There are many artists who we can use as inspiration for this, and I've included two here in this presentation. One, a Turner nominee, Yinka Shonibari, who 2004 was nominated. And in this video, he discusses how his artwork engages with issues of cultural diversity, cultural appropriation, cultural synthesis. He depicts colonialism and globalization through his art. And Turner Prize winner 2017, Lubaina Himid, she discusses in artworks such as this wonderful installation, Naming the Money, that was presented at Spike Island a few years ago, issues such as slavery and colonialism, how colonization took from people, enslaved people, lost their language, their culture, their way of life, their dress, and even their names. And she is redressing this balance through her artwork. So these are powerful artists to show to students, to raise issues for discussion, and also enable them to create in their own artwork images which decolonize the curriculum. Another area which has become significant within recent years, although ideas about it and artwork about it track back 50 years, is how we as individuals explore and express our gender, our sexuality and identity. Many artists are working in this field, and I've chosen two. Judy Chicago, whose seminal Dinner Party, created in the 1970s, represented 39 important historical female figures and celebrated women's history and contributions within this extraordinary dinner party set piece, created using ceramics, textiles, and sculpture. And Grayson Perry, who has become well known to the public throughout lockdown with his lockdown art clubs, and is unfailing in addressing these issues of personal identity, gender, sexuality, the way that society regards these things, and the way that we as individuals should have the right to express ourselves and be ourselves. And these two videos are available in the link document. Thirdly, we're looking at national and global issues. Two artists here who focus on their own work in their society, how they actually link within society, how their art represents some of the key ideas within their own culture, but also extends this to global issues. And they are global issues of human freedom, censorship, human rights, creative freedom, the way people can express through their gender, through their history. And Ai Weiwei and Joana Vasconcelos, from two very different societies, one Chinese, one Portuguese, are expressing rigorously their response to contemporary society, alongside really sort of referencing and respecting their own individual cultures. Again, available through the link document. So some artists are working very much directly within the field of empowerment, carving out areas of empowerment that perhaps previously didn't exist or have been struggled for over the years. Two artists who, in different ways, are pushing the boundaries against restricted bias with regard to disabilities, different abilities. Stephen Wiltshire, who is an MBE and has many honoraries for his extraordinary architectural drawings, which he creates and exhibits internationally. And if you look on his webpage and the link document, you will have a huge choice of different videos that you can watch of him creating his panoramas. He used drawing initially as his main mode of communication, and then he was able to add on speech as a form of communication, and now really represents both himself and shows how artists who are differently abled can create at a most extraordinary level. Alison Lapper, who has become a kind of symbol for equality and empowerment, both through the representation of her that was created some years ago by Mark Quinn, the sculpture on the plinth in Trafalgar Square, and through her own work as an artist who creates artwork through her own body and representations, paintings, which she creates using parts of her body other than her hands, because she doesn't have any. So she's creating with her feet, with her mouth. And these two videos are inspirational examples of artists who are challenging bias. I'm now going to show you a range of case studies of art exhibitions and educational projects that I have created myself and in collaboration with other artists. This artwork, More Than a Body's Work, was created in collaboration with Carol Cook, a poet, and young people across participants from New York, Heritage and Harvey Milk schools, universities in New York, and also colleges, schools, and special interest groups within the UK. If you'd like to find out a bit more about More Than a Body's Work, which is really about empowering people to feel proud of their own self-image, their own, whether it is their culture, their ethnicity, the look that they have created through their body that they use to express themselves. You can read more about it, and that reading is available through the link document. Here's more on More of a Body's Work. It included a video projection onto T-shirts printed with the faces of the participants, and statements and poems related to the body. As UNESCO Declaration on Cultural Diversity states, culture is the common human heritage as necessary for humankind as biodiversity is for nature. And one of the things that I've done within my exhibitions and adjoining projects is create events for people to join in. And in this series of life story events, young people, LGBT, people with eating disorders, people excluded from school, young mothers, as well as a range of groups through schools, colleges, youth work, etc., were invited to express something of their own stories through masks and through T-shirt designs, celebrating their uniqueness and their diversity. This next case study, Scarves Reveal and Conceal, 12 acrylic digital panels were created using the idea of a scarf as the most fundamental form of dress and expressive of cultural connection. So a length of cloth is used across cultures and across the globe as a way of denoting various aspects of ourself, our personality, and also our cultural links. Again, if you'd like to read more about this project, there is a journal article available through the link document. You can see more images here, and there are more available within the journal article. In this project, as in More Than a Body's Work, young people were involved in participating alongside the exhibition and creating their own responses and their own expression and poetry. So there's lots of opportunity for linked work across the curriculum. This particular installation, Strands, which again involved linking with local schools and colleges, etc., it set out really to explore what is the sacred for us, what is the sacred space, inspired by a visit to India, where I saw many sacred spaces and saw textiles used. This invited audiences and participants to continue to create the artwork by weaving their own thoughts and feelings into this mesh. And in the Life Stories workshops, set out to engage students critically in discussion and engage them practically through creating artwork and link with the wider curriculum to foster engagement through interdisciplinary work in the arts and humanities. So these were some of the educators' response. They felt that it generated intercultural images, it helped holistic learning, made students question what was less familiar, and challenged bias, and extended understanding, and created positive ways of encouraging empathy and prompting relevant discussions on who we are, what is important to us, and what makes us who we are. So my third case study, and again, there is extensive information there within the link document to the Arts Together website. This was a 2-year project funded by the European Commission with a range of international partners from across Europe. 5 countries were involved, and myself and colleagues from Basel University were we were responsible for creating a curriculum that could be used within countries with migrant communities, both with the migrant young people themselves and also with the host in host settings. So the Arts Together project, the reason for the project was that there was concern about the fact that many migrant children and young people, some unaccompanied, who were arriving in the EU were actually not being kind of well served through the education system. They felt excluded, and there was also confusion among some of the host groups as to how they would fit in with the society, where were the common elements, and where people misunderstand, particularly where the media is creating negative impressions, then those negative impressions need to be overturned by positive images to see what do we share, what do we have in common, and also to recognize these 2 areas, inclusion and empowerment, to include but also empower through recognizing that migrants arrive with knowledge, skills, and cultural experience. They have much to contribute to the society that they arrive in. They don't come empty-handed. And if we can actually extend understanding as a host country and incorporate those skills, we will all be, it will be beneficial for all of us. So some of the challenges for the migrant children related, of course, to experience of trauma, which is inevitably an aspect of fleeing your home and your country, and arriving perhaps with limited language, economically deprived, you've had to leave everything behind, you're subject to prejudice, people feeling that you may be coming to take something from them, and perhaps having low expectations and insufficient support. All of this could tend towards people achieving less than they are actually capable of. So the Arts Together project set out to help to integrate migrant children, counter disadvantage and challenge bias, and promote linguistic and creative development, stimulating knowledge, understanding and critical thinking, linking across the curriculum through interdisciplinary learning, creating a supportive curricula to develop inclusion. And you can find more from the Arts Together curriculum design guide, which is, the link is within the link document. So this is what the curriculum design guide sets out. It sets out the aim, the rationale, the pedagogy of the project, who would be involved, and that is basically young people right through to secondary level from early years, and their families and communities. So it's a very wide-ranging project. It takes the form of a curriculum structure with 5 modules. And these are the modules. Now, I'm presenting this to you because it could also be of great use to you in your planning You have as a resource 15 presentations. Each of these 5 modules: journeys, global stories, performing people, our shared environment, and celebration, each has 3 themes with PowerPoints, guides, and linked resources. And these are available to you, they're free at source, to incorporate with reference, obviously, into your own planning, as they are designed to recognize diversity, recognize where our differences lie, but also to celebrate what we share as a global community of humans. And in some cases, not just humans, because Module 1, Journeys, it sets out to challenge the idea that there is anything strange or abhorrent or abnormal about migration. Actually, all species migrate, and many species, their existence is based and predicated on migration. And this happens throughout their life cycle. So, and this includes humans who have always migrated across the globe from early in our history. So here are instructions to create 4 different prints: a holograph, a stencil, a polyprint, a lino print, and the PowerPoint. These are slides taken from the PowerPoint presentations. They actually outline for people who possibly have no skills aren't trained, ways of using scrap materials in many cases, or inexpensive materials, to create stunning prints which explore the theme of journeys and migration. So feel free to use any of these within your own planning. And then Module 2 looks at global stories. This is a theme. One of the themes is puppets. Right across the world, we used puppets. You can see here Indonesian rod, English glove puppets, body puppets, finger puppets. They're used all across the world to share our stories, our traditions, and our beliefs. Module 3 focuses in on performing people, how we can express ourselves through our faces. Even without language, we can share and express. And within this particular theme, you can see using simple materials, tissue paper and glue, and perhaps mimicking our own faces or photographing ourselves or each other. What are the key expressions that we use that we can easily recognize in each other? And then linking this with expressive faces and masks, again seeing how right across the globe there is a commonality of expression, and we can link up our own facial expressions to those of the masks and faces. Module 4, our shared environment, looking at organic and inorganic artifacts and items that we can incorporate into sculpture. And these were made by Key Stage students, inspired by Andy Goldsworthy. Wonderful group sculptures made using entirely organic materials. And finally, Module 5, celebration. At the heart of all celebration is shared food. And in this module, we look at different aspects of food culture and encourage not only exploring through making actual food, but also using food as a basis for creating art. In this one, we're looking at celebratory cakes, wedding cakes from across the globe, and using it as inspiration to create a celebration sculptural cake using recycled material. So these ideas have been taken out across Europe and incorporated into projects with migrant groups within schools, migrant camps, community centres, nurseries, and also presented to EU policymakers at the Parliament in Rome in 2019 and to a UNESCO conference in 2021. And they continue to be used to support integration and support inclusion and empowerment with mixed communities, including migrant groups. So I'd encourage you to dip into that and see what you can use in your own teaching. Here's another example of a very positive project, Dials, which sets out to support children to be tolerant, empathetic, and inclusive through talking, and also through creating artwork that stimulates talk. So again, you'll find this in the link document, and I'd encourage you to look. There's a virtual gallery of outcomes which may inspire you too. What other ways are there of art educationalists actually supporting and promoting inclusion? 2 videos here. Again, you can watch the whole videos if you have time, or sections of them. Inclusive arts. This one looks at how working with diverse abilities and ages within a context such as the Tate Modern can actually not only support the artists with disabilities, but also present a real challenge to that bias in terms of limitations of differently abled artists. And Young Brits at Art, as it says, engaging with equality and human rights through their art. So what I'd like you to do, thinking and reflecting on the narratives you've seen through the videos, the readings you've dipped into, consider how can arts projects impact on individuals and their communities? How significant is art within society? Of course, in the curriculum too, and to use those ideas to design an art project to engage a group who might be excluded within education and society. And that could be a group within your school or a wider group within the school community. Here are the references, and I hope you've enjoyed this webinar, and I would invite you to continue to explore through linking with the videos, the readings and web links to find out more about this worthwhile and interesting topic. Goodbye.